Following on from my video with my 2026 provisions for the day-to-day French property market, I thought I would take a closer look at the prestige market, or rather the prestige markets. Because this is not one single market and it never has been. In reality, there are three very different markets at play and they all work in very different ways. Let's start with what I call the luxury market. That is to say roughly 5 million euros and upwards. If you are looking at properties above the 5 million euros, you are one of the select few and you are not dealing with a visible and transparent market. A large number of high value transactions are done quietly behind closed doors. They rarely appear on the property portals and they rarely generate public statistics because ownership is often transferred through company structures rather than direct sales. This is a very hard market to give provisions for as there is very little information in the public domain, and trying to is like trying to judge the size of an iceberg based on the visible part. Buyers at this level are internationally mobile, well advised and highly sensitive to global instability. These buyers don't buy because they found something that would do. They buy when they find the place that suits their needs at that specific moment in time. When they move decisively. Until then, they are perfectly happy to wait, sometimes for years, rather than compromise. At the moment, a large part of this market is holding fire. Not because they lack the money or the motivation, but because they don't like the uncertainty created by a few world leaders that aren't holding fire. That is why this end of the market can appear quiet for long periods and then suddenly produce a public sale that seems to come out of nowhere and completely distort local statistics while it's at it. In 2026, this market remains present but selective. The money is there, but the urgency is not. And as always, there seems to be no real logic to the pricing of these properties. Then we have what I call the prestige market. Although there is no set rules, I would say that this is from roughly 1 million up to the 5 million mark. This is where people are usually making a genuine lifestyle choice rather than a pure investment decision. Buyers here are often cash buyers too, but unlike the luxury end, they are not simply releasing a few assets or selling a subsidiary company. More often than not, they've sold up elsewhere and are starting a new chapter in their lives. That means this is where emotion, comfort and lifestyle all enter into the equation. This part of the market benefited greatly from the post-COVID surge when people were buying first and thinking later. Luckily, things are changing now. Today's buyers are far more in touch with reality and asking the right questions about running costs, heating systems, insurance and sheer scale. In 2026, this market is cautious on the French side, but noticeably less on the expat side. French buyers are often tied to a limited geographical area for family or professional reasons. Expat buyers, on the other hand, are far more mobile, happy to travel across the country visiting chateaux until they find the one that fits. And this is where the American and British buyers play a particular important role. For many American buyers, $1 million buys a comfortable 3-bedroom house in a good suburb. The same applies in the UK. A detached 3-bedroom house in a desirable part of Surrey can very quickly push up into the 7 figures. When those buyers arrive in France with a budget like that, they suddenly have access to something far rarer than they would get back home. A characterful home with real history and not just floor space. How this actually affects the market is that there is now a larger choice of property out there, due to an increase in properties coming on the market, but also previously overpriced ones coming down to a more respectable level. A lot of buyers are also realising that they don't necessarily need massive properties for them to be character properties. After all, how much space does a couple really need to live comfortably? And the third market is what I call the heritage market. If your budget sits below the 1.5 million euro mark and you're prepared to prioritise character over standing, this is where things really start to get interesting. This market is opening right up, with an effervescence for character homes with soul and history. There are plenty of new properties full of character that were never previously considered as prestige. Not because they lacked quality or history, but simply because they didn't fit into the old prestige price bracket. For many years in France, a prestige property wasn't really a type of property at all. It was a price tag. Quite literally anything over €500,000. Whatever the style of building, it was considered prestige. Anything below it wasn't. And it was as simple as that. With the ever rising prices of new homes, that definition has shifted. Prestige is now far more closely linked to heritage and character, and the price tag has become much more flexible. It now includes chateaux, manor houses, abbeys, convents, maisons de maître, watermills and other historical buildings that offer character and history rather than simply being over a certain price. There are still properties below €500,000, but most of them will require a large level of work. But increasingly so, some of the most interesting opportunities sit between €500,000 and €1 million, particularly if you're prepared to accept some degree of modernisation. And yes, I said modernisation, not renovation. To put that into context, that is often the same budget as a perfectly nice modern house on the outskirts of a popular town. So for many buyers, the choice becomes very simple. Do you buy a comfortable, efficient, modern home with very little character, or do you buy a genuine slice of French history with soul, assuming you don't mind picking up the paintbrush and accepting a bit of quirkiness? What's also changing is where these properties are being marketed. Prestige agencies are gradually lowering their entry thresholds, but at the same time we're seeing more and more heritage properties appearing with less pretentious agencies rather than specialist prestige brands. In 2026, in my opinion, this is the most active and resilient part of the prestige markets. Buyers here are informed, pragmatic and realistic. They expect some work and they budget for it. They're not buying fantasy or status, they're buying history, character and soul. And the wise buyer will keep an open mind to where and what he is buying. It is no longer a case of buying a title, it is a case of writing your own history. So to round up my thoughts for 2026, in the luxury market, things will continue to tick over. The prices won't change as there is no real rhyme or reason to them. Once world politics calms down again, that market will start moving again. In the prestige market with a large influx of expat buyers, this market is stable and healthy and will continue to thrive. And in the heritage market, this is in major expansion. Not a price explosion, but a choice explosion. Just nowadays, you'll have to enlarge your net to catch that rough diamond. So, as always, if you found this useful, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel and click the bell so you don't miss the next one. And if you want to show your appreciation, you can even buy me a coffee with the QR code on the screen. I'm Dan Newton, the French estate agent. À bientôt.